please give a big spotlight welcome to John Richie.
Bang, bang.
Hey, man.
Shut me
Good.
down, bang, bang.
Stop at home.
I hit the ground, bang, bang. That awful sound, bang, bang. My baby shut me down.
Yeah. All right. I felt like we were in one of these jungle movies or something, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Well, great to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Now, this new film is called 91%. It's about gun control, which, as we know, if anyone's seen the news in the last couple years, is extremely relevant. But before we start the interview, we're going to show a short clip from 91%.
Okay.
Two masked intruders came into our house, came into our bedroom, and started shooting.
At least 27 dead, 20 children, 7
Were
adults.
shot as gunmen opened fire at a Mother's Day second
This
line.
particular circumstance had one thing in his mind, and that was to kill a large number of people.
Gunmen walked into the lobby and opened fire.
Young man on his knee, shot. Young man laying next to him, shot.
And a man walked in the front door and was face to face with us.
And we stopped and was like, whoa, that sounded like a gun.
Don't go to the gun shop. Go to the gun show. Go in there and get you a gun and get whatever you want and walk right on out. It's just that easy.
Wow.
Some intense stuff.
Yeah,
huh?
definitely
Yeah.
intense stuff.
Yeah.
But it's an important conversation that needs to be had. Explain to everyone, what is this 91%?
Okay, well, so 91% comes from a poll that came out shortly after the Newtown shooting,
Right.
that was put out by Quinnipiac University, that said that 91% of Americans were for background checks on all gun sales. And despite having that kind of mandate from the people, Congress still doesn't pass a universal background check. And so the film is largely about how that affects our public safety.
Right. Now, I couldn't imagine getting 91% of Americans to agree on anything.
Right,
That's
yeah.
a pretty big super majority.
Yeah, I mean, it's more popular than education. You know, I mean, things that typically
Wow.
anybody would say that they're for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how accurate is that, though? I mean, you traveled around the country interviewing people
Yeah,
on all sides of this. So.
Yeah, so we did, like, as far as one of the things that we wanted to do with the film was really wanted to test that poll, that number. And so outside of interviewing the people that are like featured in the film, which are all victim survivors of mass shootings, we also interviewed people in different cities around the United States, and we even went to the NRA convention in Nashville and interviewed NRA members.
Right.
And,
Now, what did they have to say?
Well, interestingly enough, we interviewed 15 NRA members, and when we asked them if we can interview them, the first thing they said is that we probably wouldn't like what they had to say. And so we interviewed them, and out of the 15, 13 were for background checks on all gun sales.
Oh, really?
No question about it. And oddly enough, we actually saw eye to eye on the issue of as far as gun policies.
Wow. So if Americans, gun owners, NRA members, I mean, like you said, 91% of Americans favor this, then what's the problem? Yeah.
The holdup is that as far as the gun lobbyists don't want there to be, they want as little as possible regulations, and it's because they're acting in favor of gun manufacturers. And so any kind of gun regulations is going to lessen the sales of guns. And so therefore, they don't want to stop that profit margin.
Right. Now, I didn't realize that background checks weren't a thing. Like, I thought if you went to like Walmart or a store and bought a gun that you had to.
There is. So like since 1994, there's been background checks, but then there's this loophole that's called the person-to-person or private sale loophole.
Oh, okay.
And so what that means is that only federally licensed dealers have to do background checks as it stands right now. So that's like your stores like Walmart or like Sports Academy or like your pawn shops. But if you're a person that does not have a business license, that's not a federally licensed dealer, typically, so if you're not a business, you can sell guns saying that you're a hobbyist or that you're selling it from person to person. And what you have is you have people that take that kind of status and they sell thousands and thousands of guns every year. And so it's more than just like a loophole. They say, like there's been some studies that came out a while back that said that 40% of your guns are sold through these loopholes.
Oh, wow.
And the thing is that poll is not the strongest. Harvard came out with one that said something close to that too. But like what's more as far as compelling is this, is that 80% of guns that are recovered from crime scenes are got through this private loophole.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, wow, that's
It's
saying
pretty
that's saying a lot.
significant.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people that shouldn't have guns probably know that, like, well, I just go to a gun show or
Yeah, you know, you can get them online. They have websites like Arms List that will even like say that, like, as far as like that I want to sell this gun, and background check not required. And the way that the law stands right now, the person that's selling the gun is not doing anything illegal. There's no accountability as far as like if that gun was used in a crime, you cannot be held responsible for selling that gun because of this loophole.
Now, okay, to me, I'm a pretty simple person,
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that, but it seems like basic common sense that everyone should have to go through a background check to get a gun.
So
you
yeah,
wanna
so
keep
you
them
fall
out
into the
of wrong-
91% of people, right?
Well, what argument is it just to say that anybody should be able to get a gun, no questions asked?
Well, okay, so you know, there's the small majority or the small group that doesn't see the value in background checks or don't want universal background checks. They think that a background check is like a thinly veiled government registration system of guns. Like if gun owners are worried that the government's going to eventually come out and take your guns, but even the way that the bill is written, that's a federal offense. Like as far as like if you were to keep records as far as who owns guns, like as far as the FBI was to do that, then that would be considered a federal offense. So there's that paranoia, there's that fear that as far as like lobbyist groups like the NRA will continue to like perpetuate that lie.
So there's a,
And so
it's
the thing is that what
basically-
it does is it gets people kind of really riled up and it makes it to where like we're not even arguing the same thing. So you have one side that's worried about their Second Amendment being taken away, and you have another side that's worried about their public health, or as far as like the way that our relationships with guns are going to look in public.
Right,
You know.
Right. So it's a lot of misinformation going around.
Yeah, I
The-
mean-
the truth is, like, I watched the longer version of this, that 80% of gun owners favor background checks.
At least 80%. I mean, they figure on the lower side of that. So.
Now, there were a lot of mass shootings that happened over the last year. How big of a difference would it really made if there were background checks in place?
So if you take, you have some states that have universal background checks that require background checks on all gun sales. Like for instance, like California passed a universal background check back in the late 90s. California used to have the highest amount of gun violence in the country, and within less than a decade, it reduced by more than 50%. And then, which is, I mean, that's pretty compelling, right?
Wow. Now, how are things in Louisiana?
We have we're the 48th most lax in gun laws, and we're number one as far as when it comes to gun violence and gunshot fatalities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So where were the most lax states?
Yeah, so we have the weakest amount of oversight with guns, and then we also have the most amount of gunshot victims and fatalities due to it.
So the statistics show that a simple thing like passing a law for comprehensive background checks would keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people and save lives.
Yeah, I mean, a way that you could like really simplify it is to say that as far as that, the more accessibility you have to guns, the more gun violence there's going to be. You know, and some people think that as far as that if we all arm ourselves, that's actually going to make things safer. But the reality, if you look at the data, is that that's just not the case. You know, that doesn't make any sense.
But you're not necessarily focusing on that. You're focusing specifically on something that pretty much all Americans agree on. That we want to, if you're gonna buy a gun, we want to make sure that we're having them in the hands of responsible people.
Yeah, it's the whole point of it is that the reason that we focus on this law is because it's something that typically most people agree with. And so what I find is that we start to argue whenever we start to talk about like as far as like should there be an assault on assault rifles, or should there be open carry or concealed weapons. That's when we start to argue. But this is something that we all typically agree with, and it still can't get passed as far as like on the federal level. And so there's something wrong with the system that when you have so much support for this one policy, and yet Congress still will not pass the law.
Wow. And that's why you're making this movie.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, John, I want to let the audience know that this is such a relevant and important thing. I wanted to have you on.
Yeah.
The film hasn't been released. You're still you're still doing in the editing process.
Yeah.
And to finish that so that we can have this fully edited version, and you can take this and screen this all over this country and make real change in Washington, that you're still looking for some support.
Yeah. So we, right now we've been showing around, doing test screenings with the rough cut, and we've gotten great responses for it. But we're still trying to figure out how to actually finish the film to a point where we can bring it to audiences. And so we have a website, johnrichiefilms.com, where we can take donations if anybody wants to help us. We'd be really, glad to have your support.
Cool.
So,
well, John, thank you so much for doing this. It's a heavy topic, but this is a really important issue.
Yeah.
Especially something that we're supposed to be a democracy, and if 91% of Americans feel this way, then we should be able to have our voice heard regardless of the issue. But let's hear it again for John Richie and all the great work he's doing.
Thank you.